All right. Hey everyone, it's Alicia Brasher here from Cosmic Gateway, bringing you another cosmic conversation, the very first for 2020. So I'm very, very honoured and very excited to have Jen here with me. Jen
Hi.
from Infused with Light. Jen, welcome. Thank you for
Hi,
being
everyone. Thanks for having me.
here. So, Jen,
Yeah.
I'm super excited to bring this because I haven't done a segment talking about light language for quite some time. So obviously want to dive into what is light language, but perhaps before we get into that, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, your history, your journey?
Yeah, sure. Look, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago if I'd be, speaking light language, I would have said you're tripping. I was pretty close-minded and pretty skeptical. So back in 2015, after I had like a pretty painful separation from my twin, as we often do,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like a lot of nightmares and a lot of dreams. And in one of those dreams, it was really profound, and it was guiding me to go to Sedona. I didn't even know where Sedona was, and I looked it up. I was in America. I love the States. I always go there. I love the national parks. I've kind of been everywhere around the Sedona area, like the Grand Canyon, but not to Sedona. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It looked cool, but it was very different to what I would normally go to. I like lush green trees. I like the ocean. This is like red rock desert. And I was like, oh, it's going to be roasting hot. I did go in winter. So I was really guided to go there. And when I went there, I just had this huge, I don't know, it just cracked me wide open. I felt like I was home. I kind of didn't know what was happening to me. I met a lot of amazing people just from hiking, just walking into shops, just all very synchronistic things type like happen. People telling me about galactic portholes and UFOs, and I've always been a big fan of like, sci-fi UFOs anyway. So that wasn't too far from where I was at, but there was a lot of things being like thrown at me. And then I met a lot of people, and then I went to like this wolf medicine wheel lodge, which was amazing, and I connected with them, and they're like my favorite animals. So that kind of really was like boot camp for me.
Thrown in, just like
And I was in such a emotionally raw place. It was a good distraction at the time, and I went into an amazing shop by a lady. Her name is Amanda Romania, and she has this cool shop called Atlantis in Sedona. And that's when I first saw light language on the wall. She had all the galactic races and all the ascended masters, and there was like these printouts of galactic language. And I was like, that's really cool. Like I've always been into writing and glyphs and fonts, so it wasn't that far, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. But I was definitely really drawn to it. So that's kind of like, from then it hasn't really stopped. It's been a 5-year intense, and along the way,
virtual Olympics.
yeah, pretty much. And you learn like a little bit more, and then someone teaches you about something else. And then like, a good friend of mine's like, read this book about Arcturians, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And then, like, and then on reflection, I look back and think, I've been to a lot of places that are like the chakras of the earth, like all that type of stuff. The more you go into it, the more you do it. So, yeah, and even having conversations with my parents, like who I thought were very skeptical, very closed, talking about the pyramids with my dad, and I think it's the more you start talking to people, it's if you just scratch a little bit beneath the surface, it was kind of there. So mine's been really intense, and I feel like a student, like I really can't stop looking into it, investigating it, studying it, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. And we've had the privilege of knowing each other for just over a year now, and I just look at and just want to acknowledge, like I look at you and how far you've come in your own ascension process, and it's nothing makes my heart sing louder than to see someone go through the ringer and then just these gifts and talents that just start to emerge through that process.
Yeah, and I
And
was just reflecting last night because we haven't been able to see the stars here for a long time in Sydney, and I was just thinking, gosh, I just would never have in a million years have thought that I would be able to do the things that I'm doing. But I've never felt more in alignment than what I have in a really long time doing it. So I was like, tick, doing something right.
and so when I know that there's been a lot happening in your life. Do you, and the light language that sort of just spontaneously started to channel through you, was that surprising? Like, how did you react and how did you respond to that?
Well, I don't think it's by any coincidence. A lot of teachers that I've been drawn to are musical, and they channeled and they did it. So one of my amazing teachers, Carmel, she channeled light language, and I didn't understand what it was, but I loved listening to it. I don't know, I just found it really interesting to listen to, and I've always been a big fan of music and singing. I mean, I cannot sing for the life of me unless it goes like really, really loud. So I've always kind of been drawn to sound music and that kind of stuff anyway. But then it wasn't until, I think, after my mum passed away, I got really sick in general, which I realised was a combination of ascension and just grief and everything triggering each other. But I just feel like I've gone through this process of clearing everything, and my throat would get really like sore and constricted. And then sometimes I just felt the need to sing all the time, like to music all the time, listening to like my favorite stuff all the time, singing, going out into the bush singing. And then I've noticed that as emotional triggers and traumas have happened to me, that's when it's coming up. Like it started off just holding like a single note or a tone, I guess, as if you would if you were a singer, like warming up, like sort of fa la la sort of things. Just very exciting. And then it just sort of, one day I was just sitting in the park and it just wouldn't stop.
Wow.
And I just let it. So I'm either having a mental breakdown or I'm tapping into something really cool. So there are a few interesting dog walkers that day that were like, Jen's lost in marbles, but maybe I have. Yeah, so that's how it kind of came out. And then I feel like I've had some pretty key, I wouldn't call them arguments, but some challenging conversations over the past with a few key people in my life, and that's really triggered it to come out.
Yeah, and it's so often, isn't it? Like, would you agree where sometimes like the most compounding emotions and situations that sort of compress, it almost sort of bursts something out?
Like I wouldn't say my default emotion is angry. I go sad. Like I'm a crier. I really feel my emotions that way. I wouldn't say I get angry. But this time, it was an accumulation of my dad just passed away. There was some other stuff happening with my twin. It was just things unsaid that I hadn't said. And I was full of rage. And I listen to heavy metal, and I guess that's my healthy rage outlet. But this was like out of control. And I wanted to say things to people all the time, and it was through that anger and that eruption. Once I'd cleared it with the help of you and some various other teachers and techniques, I was able to access that. So it really was like pushing it up to come through, and now I can't stop it.
So talk about a day in the life and what it's like, once you sort of tapped into like that, and sort of, and I look at you with a sense of, I think how courageous for you to be able to openly talk about this, because I know that's something that people like to keep behind closed doors. Yeah. And I really think that to be able to celebrate these abilities, because they are pure channel of energy and expression, and it's something that should be shared and celebrated. So
I liken it to sort of like any sort of ancient tribal culture with their chanting. I suppose, like a lot of, no one sort of has too many hang-ups or qualms about music in that regard. And I've always been a lover of language, and I've always had a real flair for languages. So to me, it's no real surprise that, what's one other language? It's not French, but the only problem with this is I don't quite understand if it's a verb or an adjective that I'm saying. So catching public transport's become pretty challenging, just because at the moment I feel like there's a lot of things that want to come out, a lot of coding, and obviously it's specific to that person. So if someone sits next to me on the bus, being an empath, being an intuitive person, sometimes it just comes up and it's running in my head, and I just want to turn to that person and be like, blah, and say it. So that's kind of challenging, but, I go for a lot of long walks at night. so I can kind of like just do it to myself and, you know, kind of have conversations, I suppose. But, you know, and sometimes it's started to sing lately as well. It's quite fascinating. It can be quick, it can be different sounds and tones and things that I wouldn't normally do in my conversation. And I know I've joked with you and a few other of my friends saying, you know, I sound like a really angry Russian woman like a lot of the time. And you know, and I also don't know whether I'm just, maybe they just gave me the recipe for Coca-Cola and the KFC. Yep, I'm the one that's got all the stuff. Yeah,
Wouldn't that be cool?
Oh my God, that's me. That's my mission in life, was they chose me to embody the Coca-Cola, you know, which would make sense. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. You know, I kind of have to keep checking in with myself and like putting up boundaries about where my energy is going, because it's, you know, it can take over at times, especially when there's a lot of other energetic aspects or astrological things impacting everyone. Like when you talk about the Schumann resonance, like I find that affects me, so therefore I'm more sensitive and aware that it's coming out at more of an uncontrolled rate than a controlled manner.
Wow. Okay. So you're sort of tapped in and aware of when the Schumann spikes, that's going to impact you in a certain way, which is great, because it's always good to kind of keep that check in into where your energy's at and what are the influential factors, I guess. So, but talk to me a little bit about what it's like. I know that you've started doing light language sessions with other people. So can you talk about what that process is like for you, or what people experience? I know I've had the privilege of having a session. I am a massive fan of light language. It's a burning desire within me that I've always had, but I know it's not my gift. My gift is very different, and you know, maybe one day, who knows, you know, I'm open to that, but quite accepting that, you know, I work with energy and not necessarily sound. And but for me, there's such a resonance when I hear people speaking light language. I can hear the different sort of different languages, if you will. Like I don't even know where it comes from. When I first started listening to light language, I would go, oh, that's Syrian, oh, that's Arcturian. It's just a knowing. It's kind of a vibration of knowing, rather than when you hear a different language, like, you know, French or Spanish or Portuguese, you're like, oh, you know, you can kind of it's almost a frequency or a language that hits the energetic field more than the ear. Would you?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily where it's coming from. I know that it's like it's very deep galactics. Like it's very, you know, it's from the realms of, like, you know, and a lot of
high councils.
Yeah, good old council of light. And it can be different, and I think you're accessing different parts or different areas of, you know, obviously the person that you're tuning in with, you're tapping into them, where their resonance is from, where they're, you know, what planet or galactic influence they might have in their life. So I feel like it intuitively knows what to do. And so I guess the session is, a lot of people are curious about like language, like, what are you saying, what are you saying, what are you saying? And I think you have to really stress that it's not so much about what I'm saying, it's more about the energy and the frequency, much as when you're listening to, you know, like an orchestra with no lyrics, it's how you're experiencing that and the music of it and what it's doing for you, the emotion, yeah, totally, that's behind it. And you know, it's not giving you answers, it's coding that's specific to you, your body, your DNA, your trauma, your recalibration, regeneration, like all that type of stuff. It's it's kind of like, I mean, I'm a big movie nerd, so in the Matrix, when, you know, Neo's like, "Ooh, I know what's going on here, I'm the one," and like all the Matrix is like coding in front of him, you know, it kind of, I feel like it comes in flashes in my head like that, but it's blue and it's very space like kind of colors. So yeah, and it's really, really fast, and you know, I think that's something I'm still learning how to deal with. Sometimes it's really intense, and just like any energy practice like kinesiology or Reiki or, sound healing, you will have different experiences. So it could, hot and cold flushes and tingles. So it does what it needs to do. And I think integration of it is really important. Like, oh, I've had a session, now I'm good. But, it takes time to implement and integrate. And even for me, like I can sometimes have the physical unpleasant side effects of that sometimes, of like purging and clearing stuff out of people.
Yeah, because I've actually watched you. I've had the privilege of watching you do that, and it's interesting when you when you practice energy, you're kind of so curious about how people do that. And the way that I likened it was almost like I could feel you kind of sucking out, if relevant for the person, but it was almost like sucking out whatever was needing to release, and it's almost like you're transmuting that in the process. And I know that some other practitioners of light language that I've known in the past have said the same thing. It's almost like there's this sort of transmutation of releasing and then encoding the new frequencies.
Yeah, and I've always worked really closely with the violet flame. That's something that was one of my first kind of things that really, and I've been told that by various other teachers, and I remember going, what the fuck is a violet flame? Sorry, swearing. And but that's, the more I looked into that, that's transmutation. That's everywhere I've been drawn to in the world is like a place where an ascended master who deals with transmutation resides, etherically, at least anyway. So I definitely feel like there are transmuters in the world, and I guess like, there's a lot of computer games that I play. And transmutation's often like a spell, so like it's not like it's uncommon. People do it. That's where my name for Infused with Light came from, World of Warcraft. It's a spell that like all the healers use. Anyway,
how fitting. I love that.
Yeah, I'm such a dork, but I was always like, even from a young age of like playing computer games, I was like, no, I don't really want to be a fighter, I don't really want to be a warrior. I want to go, like, there's a great game called Skyrim, and it's like they have a college of arcane arts, like, and you have to become an illusionist, or it's just great. So even back then you have some remembrance of like, in your DNA, it's just that recall of it, I guess, which just has taken 37 odd years, but hey, better late than never.
and I think I love some of the things that you've described, because I think a lot of people, who resonate with the Stasi term, who have come from far and wide to help the planet ascend ultimately, that some of the key elements are, that drawn to sci-fi, drawn to computer games, have affinity with the stars, have
nerds of the world. It's where we're really affinity for them. We need them.
Right, and I often think about like Dolores Cannon's work, and she talked about the second wave, the first, second and third wave of volunteers, and the first wave, were kind of just after the Second World War, which were our parents' generation. I know that we're similar age, and they were the ones that sort of paved the way to bring through the next frequency of children, which would be the second wavers, which we sit in. And I think they tend to be, the ones that hold and anchor the light, or transmute, or do both. So it's very,
I'm not very sure sometimes why. Like, I signed up for that process. Like, it's pretty brutal and it's pretty rough. And I was like, was I in sound mind when I agreed to this? Like, and I think, there's probably a lot of skeptics, and a lot of my friends don't know that I do this yet. So, but I think if they looked at my life and like the timeline of like all my interests and hobbies, and even some of my favorite musicians, the more I'm tuning into that, I'm like, wow, that, I'm aligned with the same types of viewpoints on topics that they are too. So
right. Yeah. And once again, just to acknowledge, like, that whole stepping out of the spiritual or the space closet is not an easy thing to do. And I just
my galactic closet, yeah.
I want to kind of like label you the galactic Katy Perry, because
no, she's my favorite. Well, she has a song called
the striking resemblance. You realize that?
Oh, stop. But she also, she has a song called Extraterrestrial, like, come on, peeps.
It's out there. The truth is out there.
Yeah, like, I think, yeah, you just get people around a campfire and God forbid there's any drugs or alcohol involved and someone loosens up the conversation and, it's unfortunately we shouldn't have to use those like, lubricants, I suppose, to like ease into the conversation. But,
yeah, I think I found that a lot, like, my galactic connection came in quite abruptly at the end of 2015. It's interesting, we have very similar timelines, but and I look back and I can see how I was gently sort of massaged into it my entire life, and then it was like kaboom. And from that point, bridging that conversation with someone, it's amazing that when you get someone one-on-one and you're open with them, they'll come forward and go, well, actually, yeah, I saw a UFO. Or, actually, I had this. And I often, like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it, but I often think that most people, we are having these experiences. It's very multidimensional. And when we awaken to it, we realize it's been happening for a lot longer than just what.
We're so cool and clever with all our scientific secret top NASA. No, guys, like we've been here for a blip, and like multiple timelines, multiple quantum, like just, yeah, I know it's, but once upon a time I was that person.
Right.
Like, whatever, pineal gland, what's that? Now it won't stop bloody throbbing, and I can't take any more Nurofen because it won't go away. So
hashtag ascension symptoms 101.
Yeah, don't fight ascension symptoms with normal medicine because it won't work. Especially like when everything is quite galactic. I think your head kind of really suffers. Like everyone will have a body part, and mine's in my head. So
yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about like what the symptoms that you've experienced over the years, like, as if you look back at the timeline, and now obviously things are just switched on and it's all flowing.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, look, I'll be really honest, a lot of heavy emotional debris processing. I think I've spoken to you like a lot about like ancestral grief, like just so much grief. Yeah. And I really identify with the term Blu-ray beings, like a certain Stasi that's come here specifically to change the lineage and the DNA structure of pretty dysfunctional, borderline abusive, like all those dark kind of aspects in a family that you don't kind of want. So again, not sure why I chose that, but so my family, that's been a very challenging trigger for me. And looking back now that my mum and dad have both passed, it's kind of now I can see how much I've transmuted of all that, and how I had to with grieving them, their life and their death, and then being like, oh, okay, that's separate now, and then it's my stuff that's had to come through. So I was kind of doing it a little bit. I had my mum, then I had my dad, and now recently I've been doing myself, and it's in each of those shifts something massive has happened to me. Like, my first one was seeing like colors and auras occasionally and thinking, oh, but I have no control over it. So I guess my first symptom was like heavy emotion, and really thinking, what type of mental disorder do I have? And going all the usual routes of seeing like doctors, therapists, all that kind of stuff, antidepressant, like just stuff that doesn't work. And then when I started to tone a little bit, I started to get horrific migraine. I've always suffered from migraines really badly, but they just became so brutal. And there's a term called aphasia, which happens when you get a migraine, and it affects your language center, which I found really interesting. So instead of saying things like, I need to get home, you'll be like, home the cat. Like, just, you can't make sense. And when I had like my first couple of downloads, it was kind of after a migraine, and while I was still in that weird state of like nothing's really making sense, but I was obviously accessing or tapping into a part of my brain that was, and I mean, look, there's still obviously the physical side of a migraine and stress and lack of sleep and pain, like all those types of things, but the frequency of my headaches in correlation to some of my developments, I suppose, psychically, etc., it was too uncanny. You couldn't not say that they went hand in hand. And then obviously eating, weight, like that kind of is a constant, you know, really guided to be really clean, obviously, and with my brain, like very guided to someone called the medical medium, who's also really guided by spirit. And a lot of people like, oh, that's woo woo, but you know, get a few celebrities like Gwyneth Paltrow talking about it and Miranda Kerr, and suddenly it's like, oh, that's okay, it's normalized now.
Right.
So I've been really called to look after my health, like in terms of like what I'm eating. So, you know, I suppose to everyone else that kind of looks semi-veganish to the outside world, but it's, you know, but then there are days when you're anchoring and transmuting where you're like, my God, I need to eat like a chicken schnitzel, and like I will never give up potato when I need to ground. Like I really want potato. So my head is probably where I'm affected the most, like headaches, sore jaw, like all in the head area. And unfortunately that still happens. But the frequency and the intensity has not been so bad. Like when I was first kind of coming online, shall we say, I had 6 in a row, and I was so desperate I thought that I had a stroke or that I had a brain tumor or something was very severely wrong with me. And after spending, you know, thousands on MRIs and doctors, and you know, it wasn't until I kind of got involved with that medical medium community and the sort of more holistic practitioners that were like, yes, there's that physical aspect, but there's also, and I was like, you know, you were reluctant at first. A lot of people are reluctant to hear that information, but until it happens to you, I think that's a phrase you should, you know, that everyone should be mindful of when dealing with people going through ascension or their own journey or anything. It doesn't even have to be that. Like until it happens to you, you can't really, and it will impact and affect everybody differently.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think hopefully that reaches someone, and if they're, you know, going through that, I have a theory that, you know, doctors and medicine isn't equipped to handle star seeds.
Well, we need star seeds to like get into those practices, right? So, and a lot of them kind of are like more and more, you know, kinesiology over like, you know, some other practices, and you know, we can heal ourselves with food. And I mean, there's a million documentaries on Netflix about it, and I'm not an expert on it, but you know, if you start really paying attention to how you feel with what you eat, and like, you know, you and I have spoken about intuitive eating, and it really is that tuning into your body and like trying to work out. But ascension's heavy going, and sometimes you just need a Coca-Cola. Like you just
Or a chocolate milk.
Yeah, I just need a late night Macca's run.
Oh, get out of my head.
What? I don't know anyone who does that. But you know, no one talks about it. And when, I mean, they do. I mean, this is why this is so great. This platform that you have is because we can talk about it. But you know, I'm half expecting a lot of people to listen to this and just be like they wouldn't have no idea, you know, and they're probably going through similar things, but it's their level of awareness and whether they want to accept or admit where they are and like their journey. And there are many times I've cursed and carried on and just been like, I wish I didn't know what I know. Like you can't unknow it. Like I'm on that path now, and I can't go back to 2015 and be like, oh, I should have just gone to Walt Disney World in Florida instead of Sedona, you know. But I had such an overwhelming urge, and that catalyst has brought me through all the healing and to be the person that I am today. So, you know.
And now, you know, like through all that, now you have this gift that you can impart and help other people through, you know, their attuning and then their coding and their ascension process. And, you know, I agree with you. Like I look back at my life and I don't even recognize who I was prior to 2015. But would I change it for the world? No. Like, has it been hard? Yeah. Have I wanted to opt out and beam me up and all that? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's something that's really important to touch on, like the opting out thing. Like it's dark. Like it can be really debilitating. And if you don't have a good support network, and that's why it's really important to talk about it. Like people are always going to think you're crazy. We have a whole diagnostic criteria for that, but you know, you're not. And you know, and it's just the way of the world. Like if we want to get the world to be a better place and for everyone to be happier and healthier, like we need to start being more open. It's not just about, you know, the topics that everyone's talking about now, it's just everything. So I know, you know, sexuality is like a big topic all around the globe at the moment, and climate change and things. It's like, well, everything is just a conversation, you know, and it's just, you can bring understanding and empathy to everything, regardless of your belief system about it. So the more people are accepting of star seeds and what they have to say, and to just listen to everyone that has something of value to say. I think that's kind of, you know, I mean, I'm not perfect, I'm a work in progress, I fall apart all the time, and I think, oh, I just did that thing that I've been working on and I still did it again.
And I think it's patience with yourself too. I mean, we got dropped off on this planet, and you know, we're doing the best that we can in the density that we're holding.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know why. There's some serious chats need to go on when you know, when we do, but yeah, I'm still waiting for my mum and dad to like reveal all the answers of the universe to me in some no such luck. That would be too easy, wouldn't it? I have to work for it. But yeah, I think that's why these conversations that you have are so vital, so that, you know, bit by bit, slowly by slowly, people can find their place and help others.
Yeah, I think it's really about breaking down those barriers and like opening it up, that it's not all a bed of roses. It's hard, it's challenging, but through that there is beauty, you know, through that there is transformation, through that there is that sense of purpose that we find in that construction phase of our old life.
Yeah, and part of me just thinks, wow, how lucky am I? Yeah, it was an absolute bitch for it to happen, to get to this point now where it's channeling. Like, my God, I wouldn't probably wish that on anyone in a sense. But like you said, like, that's a gift that I've been given, and I can use it freely to help people, the earth, whatever. Like, and whether they want to accept it or not, it does what it's meant to do. And if, you know, it's like giving hugs and smiles and compliments. They're free. They don't hurt anybody. So why? With a little bit of light language sprinkled into everybody's life, right? So
I love it.
You know, I love my sprinkles.
Sure. So, I don't want to put you on the spot, but did you want to?
Just do it. Just, you know, pretty open.
I want to know if there was anything that you want to share through light language so that people could hear or experience if they're not familiar with it.
Like to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe a good thing to do is just to maybe do a blessing for the people that are tuning into it. The thing is, I never know what's going to come through. I'm like, is it crazy Chinese lady today? Am I angry Russian? And sometimes I sing, which I'm a little bit embarrassed about because I can't sing. Like I said, you know, it's like when I'm listening to like Tool or my favorite heavy metal, like really, really loudly. So, yeah, all right, I can just try and connect in and.
Yeah, and everyone can just sort of get comfortable and
get in your zone. And if you think I'm crazy, cool. And if not, also cool. Okay. Arasti shkurai baraki barakai arati marakarakaski araki goshkara agraki manakai hai arasti arahi kara askari ishkara araku manakaina aistama oshkara araki baraki baraski shkura oshkara arakamana kabarahi oshkara babarahi arakana kana kushkara agraskushkara ba ikra igla hai. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Wow, I'm dizzy now. I love it because it to me, I can see it in a lot of pictures, and I could just sort of see this almost like a pine tree it was kind of like this or tree of life, and it was sort of reconnecting and joining, and I could feel the energy starting to center into my body. So.
And I think the thing with light language is it's kind of short, sharp bursts. Sometimes it can, because it takes a lot out of me to do it, like, you know, and I can write it and draw it too. And some days I'll just do it and do it and do it. And, you know, I've looked at other people's, because you think, oh my God, I'm just doodling. Like, am I just, but it is actual coding, and I do connect with the Arcturians. I suppose that's the race that I connect with most, and yeah, it just does what it needs to do, and hope I don't scare anyone with my singing when I do it, but yeah.
Well, I think ultimately, like, you're the vessel, you're the channel. It's like you're almost like a I want to say translator in a way.
I'm like a conduit, like from
Conduit,
like space to earth, and it just kind of comes out and through. Yeah, but you're right, like a translator would, like when they're trying to everything is energy, frequency, language, like it's all vibration, it's all, and yeah, who knows? I would love to accept my Golden Globe one day when I write about all this stuff and accept it in light language. Imagine that.
Oh, what a world.
Oh, sorry, Hollywood Foreign Press. I'm just gonna, because the SAG, after all, I'm a big movie writer in my spare time. So, I think, gosh, no one's ever thanked their spirit guides, and no one's ever imagine that.
Their galactic team. Like, come on, people. You're not telling me that,
the doing is due. I mean, that's okay in a church, in a congregation sense, but I don't know how the Oscars have coped with that.
Well, I mean, they did get a little bit woke after the Golden Globes, so, onwards and upwards, right?
They're talking about plant-based and climate change, so slowly they're getting there. It would be cool one day for one of them to. The problem is, it might just come out, and I'd be like, ooh, there you go. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen, for coming in and sharing, not only, on the video, sharing your story. It's so courageous to openly talk about what this journey has been like, and sharing that beautiful light language blessing with us.
Yeah, it's been laying dormant for a long time, and
now's the time.
And if it resonates, it resonates, and if not, it's not for you, and that's okay. Everyone finds their own way and their own path and what's right for them.
Absolutely. And there's so many different modalities out there, and people will always orient to what resonates for them. So, I strongly suggest if you had any sort of impressions as Jen was doing that light language, or you're curious to know more, and want to explore something different, highly recommend to connect with her, and have a session. I'll put the details in the description box below where you can follow her and connect with her, and and explore. And if you have that, you've been one of those people that have always, gazed at the stars and had that, you might have, light language yourself, and want to explore and open up and understand that more. So
I would say too that, like, a lot of light language activates light language in other people. My amazing teacher Carmel, she Sanctum Healing, that's her page. She, I'd find myself kind of wanting to sing it along with her, even though I didn't know what she does. So I do feel you will always be guided to people, and to not be surprised if it does activate it within you. Right. And then we can all be light language. Right.
Well, thank you once again, Jen. It's been an absolute privilege to have you on here, and hopefully we can get you back on again and have another chat or Sunday sesh. So details in the description box below if you feel called or resonated, and love to hear your experiences in the comment section below, and how you found this. And until next time, just sending everyone so much love, and we'll connect with you soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.